I ask you to slow down. Una cosa más, por favor, intenten de no hablar uno sobre el otro, porque como intérpretes no queremos darle privilegio a una voz sobre la otra.
Another thing that we'd ask is that you speak one at a time, because as interpreters we don't want to have to choose which voice to privilege.
Es todo, muchas gracias. Oh, lo siento, mi nombre es Ricardo, él es George y nosotros somos los intérpretes del día de hoy. Es todo y muchas gracias.
My name is Ricardo and this is Josh, and we're going to be the interpreters today. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Ricardo and Josh for helping provide these services this evening that are very needed in our diverse and growing community. I'd like to welcome you this evening to our City Council Candidates Forum. Our purpose here this evening is to publicly engage the candidates for City Council in Harrisonburg about their views, educate voters and help them reach their own informed electoral decisions, and importantly, promote resident participation in strengthening democracy. This event this evening is hosted and designed by the following organizations: the Downtown Dining Alliance, the Northend Greenway, the Shenandoah Valley Bicycle Coalition, the Harrisonburg-Rockingham Green Network, and Better Together or Mejor, Juntos. So I'll be sharing the role as moderator this evening. My name is Lori Britt, and I'm an assistant professor of communication at James Madison University, where I'm also the director of the Institute for Constructive Advocacy and Dialogue. Lots of big words. Basically, we help to create space for productive communication, and we encourage increased opportunity for citizen engagement in public life. I'll be sharing moderating duties this evening with Tim Rubke.
I'd also like to welcome you this evening. The design and format was prepared in collaboration with the sponsor organizations, and all of the candidates were involved in knowing what the format would be as well. So there shouldn't be any surprises tonight for the sponsor agencies and the candidates up on the stage, and for us as moderators. Lori and I are to be here to act impartially. We're nonpartisan in this role to provide a fair and balanced way for information to be shared from you, the audience, as well as from the candidates. We also have authority in the room because you all give it to us. And what that means is we're here to help manage the process, keep to time when you have a lot of things that need to be said. One of the biggest issues is staying on time. And so Lori and I are timekeepers as well. And it's for candidates to stay within time frames that they've agreed to, but also you all, when it comes time for your questions and answers times, you're going to be given 90 seconds to ask questions. And so we track that too. And so Lori and I are asking your permission to serve as facilitators, as moderators tonight. And I'd like you all to agree to that by saying, yes, we agree that you may facilitate this evening. Yes. Thank you very much. So we've determined by draw who would begin, and then we're just going to simply go in alphabetical order from then on, alternating who begins. Okay, I think that covers most of what is really important here. So really, the purpose, the intent for the sponsors is to ensure that you have the most time available to hear from the candidates. And so we've established this format, the time, and these terms together. And again, candidates have agreed to it. One more comment in relation to the interpretation equipment that's being used. These are headsets. These are made available through a local Rotary grant, and that equipment is available to you all through the Fairfield Center. So please feel free to contact the Fairfield Center and make use of this interpretation equipment for any of your needs. I am Tim Rubke. I'm the Executive Director at Fairfield Center and co-host with Lori.
So the structure tonight is fairly simple. The first round will be 90-second opening statements by each candidate. followed by 5 questions that will be asked of the candidates. They have seen these questions amidst some other questions they were given in advance. These 5 questions were developed by our host organizations. Each candidate will then have a 90-second response time to each of those questions. And then the remaining time, we will be taking questions from the audience and from some of the question cards that were posted as you all came in. We'll be alternating back and forth to try and cover a wide range of topics and include a wide range of voices this evening. So we'll be starting with our opening statements.
So those opening statements by draw out of a hat. Dee Dee, your name came out as the beginner. So if you would please begin with your opening comment.
Is this on? Everyone can hear me fine? Good evening. My name is Dee Dee Dawson, and I'm also a candidate for Harrisonburg City Council. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to attend this forum and to answer the questions you all have. I'm honored to sit up here today with 5 other candidates for City Council, and I know that every one of them on this stage wants the best for Harrisonburg. Having lived and worked in Harrisonburg my entire life, I have a deep love and vested interest in our city. I retired from Harrisonburg City Schools on June 30th, where I recently served as the Director of Finance. I believe, however, that my public service to the city of Harrisonburg is not done, and that's why I'm running for Harrisonburg City Council. As a member of City Council, I will draw on my experience and extensive knowledge of the city and its finances to ensure that taxpayer dollars are spent efficiently and that services effectively meet the needs of all citizens. Harrisonburg is a growing, vibrant city. The job of your City Council is to make sure the growth is smart and well managed and the vibrancy continues. If you'll stop and think with me for a second about the many things that Harrisonburg has to offer. We have beautiful parks, biking trails that connect many parts of the city, a robust transportation system, well-maintained and achieving schools, and a downtown that has great restaurants and entertainment venues, as well as a professional public safety department, thriving farmers market and food co-op, and neighboring colleges and universities. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Alan Harned. It's spelled funky, but it's just Alan. I'm really pleased to be here, and I want to actually lead off by offering a special thank you to the 5 organizations that put today on. This is a great scene, and an extra special thank you to the folks who are here today. This is an event about connection. This is an event about collaboration, and it really is going to take every one of us to be involved in our city's future. And that starts with November 4th for everybody. But I know a lot of you guys are involved in the community, so special thank you. I'm running today in support of the missions of several of the agencies that are putting, several of the organizations that are putting this on today. I was identified by Kai Degner as a member of council. He asked, we've been talking for years, and he spoke to me about how City Council needed somebody that had more of a community development mind and a sustainability mind, and that's me. I run a nonprofit working on those issues. I got my master's in public administration from James Madison University with a focus on community economic development. I served as Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Trade for Governor Kane, working on community economic development. Harrisonburg has a history, and it has a future. We can move forward with bikes, sustainability, walking, and community development, and it's going to take all of us working together.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Hoffman, and I'm an independent candidate running for Harrisonburg City Council. Like some of the folks on stage, I am nearly a lifelong resident of the Harrisonburg-Rockingham County community. It's fantastic to be here in the, what was formerly the halls of my high school. I'm actually surprised I'm the only candidate who actually could say that. But, I'm a person who's had an interest in politics for a long time, actually since I was a student. And, just about a decade ago or so, I took a strong interest in what was going on in our community. My goals in running for office include enhancing liberty and fiscal responsibility. I think most people would agree that we have a well-run city all in all. I mean, if we didn't, why would we be living here? But I must say that there have been some frustrations that I've had and that I've spoken to other residents of Harrisonburg. Actually, one of the first things that actually got me involved in city politics was the issue of the Harrisonburg golf course. It seemed like so many residents were opposed to that idea, and yet we got it anyway. A lot of residents, such as myself, thought that we should hold on to this high school, and of course it ended up in the hands of James Madison University, who has taken a very good job of it. We need to do a better job, I think, improving our parks, improving our sidewalks, but also maintaining and I'm done. All right, thank you for coming out today.
Good evening, Harrisonburg. There we go. I like call and response. Thank you to Better Together, Downtown Dining Alliance, Harrisonburg-Rockingham, Green Network, Northend Greenway, Shen Valley Bicycle Coalition. Thank you to Lori and Tim as well, Susie Carter, Melinda Cortez, Clay Clark, Thomas Jenkins. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and most of all, thank God for life to stand in front of you today. I'm Christopher Jones, and I'd like to be your next city councilman. I want to serve, and I want to give back, not just my time, but my efforts and my energy. I've gained a lot since living in this city, and I gained a lot after attending the university here. I'm a parent, I'm a husband, I am an alum, as I previously mentioned, of JMU, class of 2000. I'm in several of the different local and regional business markets, work for WHSV, and I interact with small to medium, regional, and large national businesses every day. I'm also a part of several different nonprofit organizations and a very proud board member of Divine Unity Community Church. It is this well-rounded background and these well-rounded experiences that I have day in and day out in Harrisonburg, which make me a good candidate for city council. I believe that I share a perspective that many of you share. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Helen Shabut, and I really want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I truly believe that there's no election in which your voice is heard more than in a local race. And I also want to thank the sponsors that we have tonight for providing such a great forum for our voices to be heard. If you take nothing else from what I say tonight, I want you to know that I view this election like a job interview. I'm running for office because I want to work for you. If elected, I believe that all of my goals should reflect what you want to see done in the city. I'm not someone to dream up cool ideas to spend your tax dollars. I want to hear what your dreams are for the city. I welcome all your ideas. And my comments here tonight, I expect should reflect some truly amazing ideas I've heard from people in the city on what you'd like to see done here. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ted Bird, and I would like to thank you for allowing me to represent you for the last 8 years on council. I'm running for re-election to the City Council because I bring a balanced point of view relative to important issues about growth, community development, education, transportation, and fiscal responsibility. My family and I are tied to the community through church, schools, neighborhood involvement, public service, and just plain caring. My goal is to ensure Harrisonburg, our home, has the best quality of life it can offer. I hope to continue to apply my listening skills with varied experiences in economic development, transportation, business management, and government to provide thoughtful consideration to the many issues that come before council. I will continue to be a partner in a city government that is responsible and open to all communities who share this unique part of the Shenandoah Valley. My goal, if re-elected by you, is to listen carefully and to make decisions that will balance the needs of all of our citizens as we grow into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are going to move now to the prepared questions from the sponsors, and we'll begin with Mr. Harnett. The question is in 3 parts. 1, did you ride a bike or walk to school as a child? Why don't more children ride to school in the friendly city? How could local government help increase ridership and walking trips to schools?
First, I would like to say thank you for asking that question. I walked to school when I was in high school. I had a convenient walk, safe walk, where it was sidewalks all the way, and there were stoplights with crossing zones. I think that Harrisonburg is a city that has an enormous opportunity for safer neighborhoods for our children. We have, I do want to tip my hat to the Bike and Pedestrian Committee and the work that the city has been doing to make it safer, bikeable, and walkable. But we actually have some challenges where it's actually not safe, it's not convenient, it's not comfortable for parents to let their children walk to schools. With biking, we have a lot of shared lanes on the roads, which are a great first step, but we need to get school-aged children onto safe bicycle transportation. Knocked on doors throughout Harrisonburg, and people universally complain about 2 things, and it's sidewalks and safety for children, and it's traffic calming in front of their homes. If we could just put speed bumps everywhere in Harrisonburg, people would be exceptionally pleased. So I think that there's a lot that we can do. How can local government increase the ridership and walking trips to schools? We can work on the Greenway. We can work on the interconnected shared routes. We can work on safe routes to all of our schools and interconnections between our neighborhoods. These are things that we need to work on as a community, as groups, and it's something I will see all the way through.
All right, answer the question. Did I ride, bike, or walk to school as a child? Absolutely. When I was a student at Waterman Elementary, I certainly walked there. When I was a student at Thomas Harrison, I did not because of the proximity of Thomas Harrison being a little farther away. And when I was a student at Harrisonburg High School, my parents' house was only a block away, so of course. But the issue is, of course, some of our schools aren't exactly conveniently located anymore. The Harrisonburg High School is now on the very edge of the city, and of course, that does take its toll. You know, I've spoken with folks in the city, some actually there on Dixie. They say, you know, our students, or our children actually ride their bike to Harrisonburg High School, and they say it's not particularly safe for them to do so, because of course the easiest way to do so involves going through the golf course, which is not allowed, which means they have to go on 33, which I wouldn't really recommend for anyone. But, so, you know, we need to have safe bike lanes so that students can safely get to where they're going. We need to have schools conveniently located so that way, you know, it's not inconceivable they can walk there. So I think that would be a great way to have the local government increase walking and bike ridership, which I think is a fantastic thing for the city. Thank you.
No, I didn't ride a bike. No, I didn't walk to school. It wasn't safe for me then, and quite frankly, it's not safe for a lot of neighborhoods now. I definitely think it's a great thing that we should increase the amount of walking and biking for our students. But quite frankly, we need to increase the amount of walkable, bikeable pathways in the city. We need more square footage to walk. We need more distinct places for us to ride a bike to get to these particular destinations, i.e. school. Furthermore, as a working class parent, the amount of time dedicated to walking to and from school isn't available for me. And I think I represent a strong population of the working class citizens that, quite frankly, don't have that time. I live in a northeast neighborhood, and to be able to walk from, let's say, Kelly Street or Effinger to Harrisonburg High School isn't really reasonable. I think that we need to have more bikeable, walkable pathways for sure, and I definitely think we need to make it a lot safer. I love to walk my daughter to Spotswood, but we'd be crossing the 2 busiest streets in Harrisonburg. If you notice, that's why McDonald's is always there. There's one on Market and there's one on Reservoir. They bring the most traffic in. So definitely, I think we need to increase the amount of bikeable, walkable pathways in Harrisonburg, increase the amount of sidewalk. Let's make it safer for people to enjoy. And let's fulfill that bike plan that we have sitting on the shelf. Let's push that through. Let's push through that Northend Greenway. Thank you.
I think we can agree that this is an issue that comes down to safety. I will say I was able to walk to school for many years growing up, and that was a real blessing for myself and my family, not having to drive me or put me on a bus, get up early every day for it. Fortunately, in Virginia, our city is able to apply for the Safe Routes to School grant, and that enables us to complete city projects that make it walking and biking to school available for more students. I think some of the things we can do would be providing more adequate lighting. You know, it's starting to get dark earlier now. Shared lane markings are starting to go up all over the city, and I think that's a really good thing. And another thing that I think would make a huge difference is more curb extensions here in the city. It's a relatively cost-effective way to shorten the route that people actually have to walk across the street, and it creates kind of a visual barrier for drivers and helps people slow down driving in the morning and afternoon when students are walking.
Yes, I did bike to school. Yes, I did walk to school. And yes, I lived in the county. It was a different time. I also hitchhiked home when I was in elementary school. My mom didn't like that too well. So. And I also rode the school bus. Currently, choices made for transportation of children to school is based on safety and parental choice. With that, parents have to feel safe when their child goes to school. As a city, in the last 8 years, we've undertaken 3 safe routes to school programs and building projects. One being Keister Elementary, one being Waterman Elementary, and I believe we're soon to start on Stone Spring Elementary. In addition, when we built Smithland Elementary, we did build a mixed-use path from Country Club Road to the school. Now we're trying to make those connections to the charter court on Country Club, and that is in process. So, have we heard this concern? Yes. Have we undertaken steps to correct it? Yes. But there is more to do, and that we're aware of and we're going to pursue as money becomes available.
Where I grew up in the city used to be in the county. So when I went to school, I did not ride or walk to school. I rode a school bus. Now, of course, that's annexed into the city. When I went to James Madison University, however, I did often walk to school because I did live at home on Port Republic Road, so it was a very short walk. In terms of schools and children walking to schools now, I do think that parents cite most often safety and distance is the reason why their children do not walk to school. I do think that Harrisonburg City has an obligation to make sure that schools are safe and that the walks to school are safe. And I know that both Waterman and Keister both harnessed very large federal grants in the last several years to extend those safe routes to school. In fact, they're called safe routes to school grants. I think that these 2 grants, in the sidewalks, and the signage, and the lighting, and the bike trails, can serve as models to increase that gateway to walking to school throughout our city. So I hope that we're able to do that. I also think as a city council person, we can serve as models by trying to walk different places. I'm fortunate where I work right now that I can walk down through the field from my house to my place of work. So I hope to be able to encourage more of that as a city council person. Thank you.
Thank you. Second prepared question. Harrisonburg is one of the fastest developing cities in Virginia. Many important decisions seem to have been made quickly, and many working class residents feel like Harrisonburg is leaving them behind. In the past few years, we have seen many new businesses that appeal to affluent residents, increasing gentrification of our neighborhoods, and a lack of new, good working class jobs. What are you willing to do to uphold your commitment to working class people? We'll begin with Joshua.
Well, I would certainly agree with that sentiment. It does feel like that a lot of Harrisonburg is being left behind. You know, and that's terribly unfortunate. And so, you know, we have to get the community involved, and not just, you know, the developers or the people who are bringing, you know, these expensive projects to our city, but everybody involved. I mean, that includes you all here who have come out today. I mean, you know, we go to city council meetings, and of course, oftentimes it feels like it's just a repeat of our forum. As you know, sometimes it's just the folks here and just a handful more. But no, we need to reach out to all segments of our society, and I think, you know, an important part of that is not having, you know, it feels like oftentimes the city council is sort of picking winners and losers with our local businesses, and you know, that just rubs me the wrong way, and I would certainly oppose continuing that practice if elected to city council. Thank you.
The disparity between the affluent and the working class goes a lot deeper than the past 5-10 years or a few of the more popular decisions that have been made by city council. Quite frankly, it goes back about 50 years or so. It goes back to Project R4, an extension of Main Street, the area where Klein's, Dollar General, and Rose's and Rockingham County building is now. Black businesses and black homes were classified as slums by city planners, by city government. Homes were leveled, people were displaced and moved into public housing. Now, a lot of this was predicated due to the racism, due to the classism of the time. I do believe that, yes, racism and classism still exist, but I also believe that if we continue to move forward without being inclusive, without being sensitive to everyone that does not have privilege, we could have a repeat in silent ways of Project R4. I would hate for us to move Harrisonburg forward without the 17% of Hispanics that make up the city, the 6% of African Americans that make up the city, and those individuals that make up the 50+ languages that are part of our school system. We brag about that. Let's make sure we're loving them and including them in the decision-making processes. Let's make sure we're including the working class in all the decisions that we're doing. Thank you.
I view this less as a commitment that I would make to the citizens here and more of a lifestyle. I graduated from JMU working for $8 an hour, and I didn't have any savings. And it was just enough to pay for my apartment with 3 other girls and keep my 1996 Volkswagen running. Even though I didn't find a job having to do with my degree, which is what I get for being an English major, I was able to find a better job in this area and get an apartment for myself. And I feel so blessed to live in a community where there is opportunity for me. Harrisonburg has experienced a lot of economic growth in the last few years, and I think that is something to be celebrated in our community. To give other people the opportunities that I have, I promise that if you elect me to council, I will oppose any kind of ordinances, zoning ordinances that keep people from living in single-family homes with other unrelated people so they can improve their living situations and not have to live in cramped apartments. And I also promise to try to lower our personal property tax rates to what they were before this year's fiscal budget, where they raised it 50 cents on the $100. I think that really hurts people whose only possession is their car, disproportionately hurts those.
Yes, Harrisonburg has a commitment to continue to recruit new employers to this area, as well as a commitment to work with our existing employers to expand their employment base. In addition, we need to partner with both our community colleges for work, training, and skill development, as well as challenge our school systems to be developing and graduating ready, employable individuals that choose not to go to college. We have a lot of opportunities here we need to take advantage of it. And we currently recruit day in and day out to bring new jobs here and work with our existing employers to expand their base. And as a council member, I've tried to make it a point to provide a pro-business climate here in this area for these businesses to make investments, to employ us, so we all can benefit.
If we don't encourage businesses to move into Harrisonburg with appropriate development, then we're going to lose jobs anyway. So I think that as a city council person, I'm going to make job creation one of the top priorities that I have. We need to have good, clean jobs in the city of Harrisonburg so that anyone who wants to work can work, and that we're not displacing citizens from their homes by bringing businesses in those locations. So one of the things that I want to do is to encourage job creation that's appropriate and fiscally responsible to provide for good economic development here in Harrisonburg.
I'm willing to take a longer view on this. When you look at the city of Harrisonburg, we actually see a number of fairly enormous problems. A very high poverty rate, a very high free and reduced lunch rate in our school systems, with some schools at a 90% rate. These are symptoms of an enormous problem. Problems of underpaid families that aren't making enough to get by without significant support. That is a serious problem. This is something that I think that we can all work together to advance and collaborate with. I actually grew up with 2 teachers as my parents, so I was on food stamps. I was on free and reduced lunch on my way up. I went to school for community development in the Kane administration, working with communities throughout Virginia, and I do think that we can work to attract and enhance our workforce, enhance businesses by working with our workforce. We can identify sites that can house these new businesses, and we can collaborate. I see that there is a renaissance downtown. I see that we have great opportunity in our breweries that are cropping up. I would really like to watch what can happen with and listen to what can happen with the convention center idea. I think it would be great to take some of that property off of James Madison hands and consider creating some higher paying jobs there. I'd like to explore that. I'd like us all to be involved. So, and then there's no way we should be building a jail.
Third prepared question, start with Chris. Recently, the city has been promoting mixed-use development downtown. Many downtown businesses believe that this has resulted in a parking shortage downtown. Will the lack of parking adversely impact future development downtown? What, if anything, should the city council do to address this problem?
Well, I'm excited that more citizens are downtown. I love what Eddie and his team are doing with HDR. I think things are great. It's very attractive. My wife and I, we attend lots of things downtown. I also work downtown at WHSB. I'm glad that more people are residing there and choosing to spend their free time there. However, I do agree that parking is an issue. I do agree that parking is a problem, sometimes. And so I think that with the collaboration of residents, with the collaboration of businesses, with the collaboration of HDR, obviously our council, I think that we should come together, obviously with architects and individuals and engineers, and come up with plans to build more parking. We need more parking to have greater events. However, and to accommodate the day-to-day activities. However, I think that whatever we do, it can't disturb business as usual, because we have tons of great events that are going on, great businesses that are there every day, and so whatever plan that we come up with, it can't disturb the flow of traffic as is. So we've got to come up with some alternatives as well as build a new project. Thank you.
Last April, 2013, City Council heard a presentation by some JMU students who did a study on parking in the city. Their study showed that 80% of people in Harrisonburg said they could always or often find a spot near their destination, and the vast majority of them within 1 or 2 blocks to where they were going. They asked how people felt about the statement, "There's adequate parking downtown," and the vast majority felt either strongly agreeable or neutral on the issue overall. The study also found that even in peak times, only 60% of downtown parking was being used. To me, this shows that it's more an issue of signage and people knowing where the parking is than investing a whole lot of money when we already have lots of spaces being unused, especially on the evenings, which is a peak time, especially Thursday and Friday evenings. The parking behind the municipal building is typically not used at all. So I think that a very cost-effective way to deal with this issue would be more signage downtown.
Having served for the last 8 years, as council, we've undertaken 2 extensive parking studies. Helen is correct, both studies came back showing we had adequate parking, but maybe we could manage it a little better. With the first study, you notice parking was then added along Liberty Street, the northern part of town coming through, and then we looked at different signage and turnover with the type of vehicles. Part of the conflict we have downtown is with all the new development, we do not have a requirement that buildings provide parking for the people either staying there or working there. The city is providing parking downtown, and that is done through our zoning ordinance. This is something that we look at yearly. This is something that we continue to manage. And in the future, for us to have a vibrant downtown, there will have to be additional parking, but it needs to be done in a manner that does not, as Helen, one of the ones earlier, disturb our current businesses there. So with that, we're quite aware and we're taking action.
Downtown Harrisonburg has more vitality than ever. There's lots of shops, there's restaurants, people live downtown, and of course people work downtown. With the introduction of the 10-hour parking at our 2 decks, we found that now our decks are at 80 to 90% capacity most days. So I do believe that it behooves City Council and to work with public and private enterprises downtown to see how we can expand parking. This mixed use that we have downtown is working for Harrisonburg. It's a great place to come to laugh, to work, to play, and to even live. But parking is an issue, and as a city council person, I will try to broker those relationships between the private and the public sector to make sure that parking is adequate downtown.
I live downtown, and I certainly want to thank Harrisonburg. As a community, we invest in parking as a method of keeping our economy thriving downtown. We make it easy. We don't have a whole lot of paid parking, and that is something that's very successful for our community. I think we need to reflect on the 2 parking studies and say, use our resources wisely. We know what we have. We know that we're we know when and how we're approaching capacity, and we can look forward to the future. I, for one, am very excited about the opportunities of a future upgraded parking facility that might be a multi-use facility downtown. I'd like to see, look at the long view. What can we do best? What's the best use for this land? I'm also multimodal. I like to consider multiple options. So for me, a functional Greenway system and bike parking actually enforces these interconnected neighborhoods and opportunity. So I'm all for that. And parking of cars doesn't need to happen in a vacuum. It needs to happen in collaboration with the character of this town and in collaboration with any connection with the other associated businesses. But the one that I'd like to particularly point out is the opportunity for a downtown park. If we can figure out a way to collaborate to actually put a park downtown, maybe in place of some of these parking spaces, we would be able to, or in coincidental with parking spaces. It's an opportunity.
Growing up, I always loved going downtown. I'm sure many of you remember the Woolworths that we used to have. It's now the Court Square Theater and Calhoun. Well, it's Capitol Ale House these days. But of course, during the late 80s and 90s, the downtown started to crumble, and as businesses moved out over on Market Street. And I grew jealous, I must say, of places like Stanton and Charlottesville, who had a vibrant downtown. But now, of course, life has come back to our downtown, which I think is fantastic. But I don't, I must confess, when I've gone downtown, I very rarely find issues with parking. I go in there at all hours of the day, and sometimes your preferred light's not available, but there are others. Now, if you compare our Water Street garage, say, to the Water Street garage in Charlottesville, which of course is, 5, 6 stories, I don't know, and it feels like they charge you an arm and a leg to park there. I mean, I like the fact that we do have free parking downtown, and I haven't seen it being too much of an issue. Now, if it becomes that way, obviously, we need to restudy that. I mean, maybe add a floor on a Water Street garage. But I would love to work to help improve our downtown. But at this point, I'm not quite sure if, a huge new parking facility is really the way to go.
We'll move on to our fourth prepared question, and Helen Shabuki will take the lead on this one. The Harrisonburg Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 8, especially Section 8.3.1, because you all have it memorized, sets several ambitious goals for enhancing environmental quality, improving energy efficiency, and reducing waste in our city. Do you think the city should hire a sustainability coordinator to help it achieve these goals? If not, how do you think the city should move forward in order to achieve these goals?
Last year, I was really lucky to attend the Citizen Academy class for the city, in which we visited all the different city departments and learned about what they did. And I was so impressed with the department leaders that we spoke with. And I think that rather than hiring a new person to come in, an outsider, and kind of direct the environmental concerns for the city top down in these departments, that we should empower people who already work for these departments and know what they do and their budgets. Empower those people to find better and more efficient, energy efficient ways to run their departments.
It's a good question, and one that we've been wrestling with as a council. Two ways to look at it. If we hire an environmental coordinator with our decentralized structure of city government, my fear is the position will be set for failure because it has no budgetary control over the 13 departments. And looking at this from an operational standpoint, these sustainability or environmental goals should be included in each of the department heads' yearly goals that they could be evaluated on a yearly basis by the city manager. As Ellen mentioned, she went through Citizen Academy, and we are a very decentralized structure of government, and the department heads have the budgetary authority and responsibility to meet your service requirements, as well as for the sustainability effects upon the city. That is probably the best place for these goals to be improved.
I too agree with both Ted and Helen on this. I think that hiring a sustainability coordinator would be an unnecessary duplication of efforts. I believe that each department should act to reduce waste, to increase efficiency throughout. And by hiring a sustainability coordinator, might put that person in an adversarial position where they're overseeing all of these. So I think comprehensively, each department working together to meet the targets and the goals that the city has for energy efficiency, reducing waste, is the way that we want to go.
I'm going to echo that the city is doing a great job. We have some really skilled staff in each of these departments, folks that have been working to do wonderful things. But I will take it a few steps beyond that. We were talking about elements of the comprehensive plan that are long-standing goals that have not been accomplished. And there are some reasons for that, and part of it's because departments themselves siloed. What we have is a community that's very engaged in these issues, a community that's been working to make connections and to make progress on these issues, and I think that we have the potential to do so. In my day job as Executive Director of Virginia's Clean Cities, I herd cats. I spend time working across different layers of government, across different layers of collaboration. I worked on an energy plan for the governor. We've been working on a number of different efforts, and I think that if we could collaborate as a city on a management level cross-cutting role, maybe it'd be a volunteer, maybe it'd be a full-time paid position, maybe it'd be pieces of existing folks, but I think we should be really looking at ways that we can effectively cross-cut and take care of these opportunities. Richmond, Abingdon, Charlottesville, Loudoun. Most cities have somebody in these sustainability positions, and those cities turn it into money. I worked with the city of Richmond, and I wrote a grant to get them $500,000. If we were paying somebody $50,000 a year, they could collaborate with a nonprofit like me and make 10 times their salary in 1 year.
The first question that popped into my mind when I saw this question is, how much is it going to cost you all to have another person doing this sort of thing? And, I would also say, I'm not really in the market to expand city government. Now, of course, as Helen pointed out, actually all three of us sitting at this table attended the Harrisonburg Citizen Academy, and I thought it was a real good revelation of what our city does, and how actually so many city departments are actually working toward this strategy already. So, I haven't seen any convincing argument that would lead me to believe that we ought to hire a new coordinator, expand the city government further, put an additional burden on the tax rolls. So, yeah, at this point I would say no.
Hiring a sustainability coordinator will help the city of Harrisonburg achieve its goals. I firmly believe that we need to hire someone. One main reason, accountability. There's no one in here who's ever been employed, who's ever went to some form of educational institution that didn't have someone that they were accountable to. And the fact of the matter is, in order to enhance environmental quality, in order to move forward, in order to reduce the amount of waste, these 18 leadership positions, 13 departments, need someone to be accountable to. There must be a system of checks and balances, and currently there isn't. And this is just one more element in the city's comprehensive plan that's not being met. Quite frankly, if you look up chapter 17, it speaks about diversity. The city's 17% Hispanic, only 9 Hispanic employees. Things in this comp plan were developed and designed to be fulfilled, to push Harrisonburg forward. If we're going to write these things down, if we're going to have this type of character, a character of a city which wants to be pro-environment, saving the environment, then we've got to be accountable. We've got to be accountable to every single chapter in it, or else put it down and rewrite it, okay? We've got to be authentic. One of my best friends in Harrisonburg taught me about character, authenticity, substance, and humility. And it's time for the city to start practicing what it preaches. Thank you.
Our fifth and final prepared question will start with Ted Bird. How important is bike and pedestrian connectivity for people and neighborhoods in Harrisonburg? What, if any, are specific actions you will take to promote bike and pedestrian connectivity?
How important is bike and pedestrian connectivity? It's very important. With the urbanization of the city, and yes, we are becoming a more urban area, this will be a key for the urban experience of living in town. To the second part, what if any specific actions? Well, I'm going to back up. 8 years ago, I led the charge to bring in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Subcommittee to our Transportation and Safety Advisory Commission. At that time, the Bicycle Committee was on the outside, and I sort of led the charge to bring it into the city fold so they could have standing and also have resources of the city to promote everything that has been built since then as well as what is being planned to be built into the future. Currently, we are funded the Bluestone Trail. We have funding for a section of the Northeast Greenway. We have created bike lanes within our existing streets, as well as included them on new streets that have been built within the city. We're working on the Kale Trail as well as the Hillendale Trail. So to answer the question, how important, it's very important because we put our resources, our time, and we built these for our residents.
I echo what Ted said, that I do believe that the biking trails that we have are a great asset to the city. And the city's been very proactive in getting these biking and walking trails in place. And as a city council person, I will continue to support the upkeep and the maintenance of those trails. But on the other hand, I also have to put on my fiscal management hat that I've worn for many years in the city schools and weigh the cost benefit for additional trails. I know that there's works to have the Kale Trail expanded, the Hillendale Trail completed, and I strongly support those. But I also know that fiscally, Harrisonburg City can't continue to fund everything that comes before it. And so we do need to look at the cost benefit, how these trails are going to affect the living in Harrisonburg, the economic growth in Harrisonburg, and to weigh all of those options to make sure that we have a balanced budget every single year. Again, I do support the trails and I will support their upkeep and maintenance, but additional trails are going to need to be looked at like all other things that come before the city council to see if they are affordable and to the best interest of the city.
I'm going to say that it's fairly critical that we have a comfortable and connected network of transportation, and that extends beyond cars and beyond buses to walking and pedestrian facilities. I pledge to commute more by bike and, when we have these safe roads. I bike now and it's not safe and I'm okay with that, but I would actually pledge to change my commuting patterns as we move this forward. I pledge and promise to make bike and pedestrian connectivity a primary consideration for land use decisions and zoning decisions in this city, because I do think that this issue is very important and our connectivity is something that's necessary. I think that we all can come together on a 2015 bike and pedestrian plan as we update that document, and we can make it an aggressive document reflecting our priorities as a city. These are things that I've heard repeatedly from our citizens, folks concerned with children's safety, folks concerned with their own safety, with their spouse's safety, getting to work, with their spouses and family and friends going to school. And I pledge to provide a similar fiscal review of what we spend on maintaining and upgrading roads that have nothing wrong with them, but we replace them on a schedule. It's disingenuous to fund those roads that don't need repair and refuse to fund the transportation systems for people that can't afford to drive.
I would say bike and pedestrian connectivity is an important facet of our city. People need to be able to know that they can walk and bike in this city if that's their choice without being worried about getting mowed down. I was fortunate enough to spend some time in Germany, and of course there biking is huge. One reason for that is gas is roughly twice, or at least then, twice what it is here. But one thing we ought to keep in mind is it feels like the biking and pedestrian pathways do not seem to be universally applied, number one, in this city. I mean, some affluent parts of the city don't get as much attention. Like one of my supporters said, have you ever been over to Norwood and Hawkins Street? And of course, I took the opportunity, went over there, and of course, a lot of the sidewalks aren't available, and I think that's a terrible shame. And then also to echo what Dee Dee said, I mean, we have to make sure that these things are actually used. I mean, obviously we can't put up sidewalks every single square inch of Harrisonburg, and I've seen places where they put fantastic new sidewalks, and I've never seen anyone walk on them. So so we have to again, put these pathways to connect the city so that everyone can take advantage of them, but also do so in a fiscally responsible way.
How important is bike and pedestrian connectivity for people people in neighborhoods in Harrisonburg is extremely important. Harrisonburg is a scenic, it's a beautiful place. People enjoy walking and biking in this area, even if they're not health conscious or pro-bike or pro-walk. Quite honestly, it's just flat out fun. It's a good thing to do. I'm all in favor of it. But the greater part of this question is, how would we promote it? Personally, when elected, I would start with Parks and Rec, Harrisonburg-Rock, Green Network, Shin Valley, Bicycle Coalition, and even get into some of the community organizations like Northeastern Neighborhood Association, yet once again, Harrisonburg Downtown Renaissance. Let's come together and actually build a marketing plan, an awareness plan. The question is, how we want to promote it. Well, the only way to do it is to build awareness and to build a brand, and build a brand that sends people there, especially attracting those individuals that are less likely to walk, for those individuals that are less likely to take advantage of these walkways. And furthermore, I guess I'm a different type of fiscal conservative because I believe in making money for our city. And quite frankly, if we can start funneling our JMU students from walking aimlessly across Mason Street, across our MLK through Mason and into neighborhoods, and if they were walking into downtown, there would be more money walking into downtown and walking into downtown dining alliance's pockets, as well as to help build this parking deck that we were just talking about.
Bike and pedestrian connectivity in our city is really a quality of life issue for many of our residents, especially students who live here. When I was a JMU student, I didn't have a car for most of that, and I sometimes walked downtown for work and even to city council meetings. It wasn't always very safe. Again, I think that curb extensions would make a big difference in our regarding bike and pedestrian connectivity. If elected to city council, I would really explore what grants the city can get from the state and at the federal level to make improvements to our bike and pedestrian connectivity in a cost-effective manner.
Thank you all. We'd like to transition into the next part of the evening, and that is questions that you all have posed in writing. And we're going to alternate. We're going to also give you an opportunity to ask the question vocally. We'll come bring the mic to you. We'll alternate between prepared written questions and taking questions from the floor. We are going to put some controls around this as well. We are looking for questions of the candidates and not so much a commentary. If you have a question, we'd like to hear your question. All candidates will respond or have an opportunity to respond to your question. They can say no comment, or they can agree with someone else, or they can give a little more elaborate response. But each candidate will be given that opportunity. So you'll have 90 seconds. We'll alternate again between written questions. And so I think we will start with a written question. Be thinking that if you would like to ask a question from the floor.
Okay, we have a question from Stan Macklin. Stan, would you like to pose your question if I come to you?
Thank you very much. My question is that racism seems to be an unsolvable challenge in America. How would you, as an elected official, work to better race relations here in Harrisonburg?
You would like to start?
I'm not so sure I heard the question. How will I do that? I'm sorry.
Racism seems to be an unsolvable challenge. How would you as an elected official work to better race relations?
Mr. Macklin, thank you for that question. I think that as a city council person, heck, just as a citizen and a human being, I think all of us should work to reduce racism and to address it head on. I know that as a church member, our church is very welcoming to all people at all of our churches, at our church service. I think that me, Dee Dee Dawson, is not a racist, and I think that I should work toward making sure that racism is not in any way, shape, or form in our city government or anywhere in our life. So I think that by promoting good respect for all citizens, no matter where they're from, whether they're here originally, born and raised in Harrisonburg, or whether they came to us, they deserve the respect of everybody, whether they're coming to a city council meeting, or whether they're going to a city office, or whether they're in a restaurant or a place of business in and around Harrisonburg. So I think that good modeling and inviting people of all cultures and diversities that we embrace these things in Harrisonburg. And that's where I'm standing. And I thank you for that question, Mr. Macklin, and I hope that you respect that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Macklin, thank you very much. I think that we have some great community groups in Harrisonburg that are considering this issue, but you're right. This cuts to the core of the challenges that we have as a community and the impetus behind events like this, building connections between people. We all have the opportunity to meet new friends every day, to join these groups and to work together for a better future. But we've had a series of enormous challenges in this country this summer with the essentially police and citizen challenges in Ferguson and beyond. And I think we need to be very conscious that as a community, we still need to heal. We still need to come together. So I would embrace community groups. I would embrace the community festivals that we have here in Harrisonburg. The African American Festival and the International Festival, namely, but we could come together and get outside the parks and really into the full communities and be sure that we're more engaged. I would engage in an employment review of the practices and policies of the city, working to be sure that when we do hiring committees, that we have a diverse panel that moves beyond racism and incorporates sexism and the challenges that we have with equality and homophobia in our society, being sure that we are welcome to all candidates for employment and for our community, because we are a welcoming, friendly city. And I would just bring back to connection, and the best connection I can have is hopefully I'd be able to work with Chris Jones on City Council.
I think it's undeniable that racism does still rear its ugly head from time to time. And I think a big part of that is dialogue and reaching out to people of all different colors of skin, and discovering that we all are individuals. We are part of groups, but we are individuals. And I think a big part of that would be encourage folks, especially the generation in our colleges and high schools, to get to know people of all different backgrounds. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, so that we judge people not according to the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And we've had issues with religion, we've had issues with sexual orientation, we've had issues with racism. And, it's unfortunate that people tend to lump people in these groups and they're like, oh, well, I hate him just because of the color of his skin. I mean, it's a terrible thing. So, again, I think that promoting and fostering dialogue among all the citizens of our city would be a fantastic way to move forward.
Racism is an unsolvable challenge. How would I work to improve race relationships and race relations? Well, Mr. Macklin and everyone here, as you can see, I wear the mask. I am the fortunate and unfortunate recipient sometimes of racism. However, I believe that the only way that we improve this is, one, by teaching accurate, balanced history in our school system and in a community standpoint. I think there's a lot of things, just like I educated some of you tonight about Project R4, right here in our community. Great example of how racism demolished and limited the amount of blacks that have thrived in Harrisonburg, and quite honestly, the attractiveness of Harrisonburg to African Americans. I believe that we need to work on cultural relations. I think that our community groups community organizations need to start banding together. We need to end the elitist attitude, the affluent attitude, and work closer together as a community. We have all these different groups, but it's a lot of it's broken up by class. And furthermore, myself, and quite honestly, Mr. Macklin and several others, as a part of Virginia organizing, are working with the city right now because, quite honestly, the city does not have enough Hispanics or African Americans or women in positions of power or employed that reflects the city. Thank you.
From a governmental perspective, I think the biggest thing any of us could do to limit racism in our city is working with local law enforcement. And I know an issue that's very important to many of us here today is the question of if the city is going to expand the jail here. And I think it would be a huge mistake for us to rush into a project like that. Our state is looking at alternative sentencing, and I think that's a really good thing. And to make a big investment in a jail facility, I think would signal that we're not ready to take steps in the right direction.
Racism is an unsolvable challenge. What will we do as a city? Racism is learned. I think education is the key. And I know Harrisonburg City Schools does an incredible job in educating a very diverse population. And hopefully they do it in a manner where racism doesn't play a part. So with that, I'll continue to support the efforts made by our school systems for our children. And as a city, still committed to be an equal opportunity employer, regardless of sex or gender. If you look up our mission statement, that's what we have as a value as a city, and we'll continue to apply those with that. So with that, I would say, yeah, it's a challenge, Stan. We're going to have to work at it. We're going to have to work at it every day, but we will overcome it.
Okay, we'd like to ask for a question from the floor, and what we're looking for is a question that might be a different topic from the ones that have already been kind of addressed today.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Humphreys, and I'm a student at James Madison University. As a student, it's very clear, as someone who's also an engaged member of the community, I attend church at Harrisonburg Baptist Church. It's very clear that there's a mentality among the residents of Harrisonburg that there is an us and we mentality between the students that go to James Madison University and to them mentality between some of the citizens of Harrisonburg. Despite the fact that JMU students last year contributed over 620,000 hours of community service to this body. What would you all do as members of City Council to bridge the gap, bridge the divide between JMU students and the city of Harrisonburg?
Sorry, I forgot that it was me for a second. I work at JMU, I went to JMU, I live in Harrisonburg, and I understand the perception that you see. I think we, again, need to come together as a community and recognize the value that JMU does offer. I think that there's a little bit of jealousy sometimes when we have this economic opportunity as a city, and one of the major drivers is an enormous university that's there for nine months, and then students are gone in the summer. Every town has town gown issues, but I would come at it with an open and listening attitude. JMU is an enormous collaborator with the city. You mentioned 600,000 hours of community service. That's significant. That's a lot of connection. I think about the salaries of the professors and the workers that are our neighbors and our community members. But I think that one of the largest challenges that we face is just every new year we're getting acquainted to a group of thousands of new friends. and just to be sure that as a community we can come together and keep traffic under control, keep parties down. I actually think that some of the Greenway discussions that we've had here earlier can lead to reducing some of the traffic during peak times, and that would eliminate one of the problems. But we do need to build community.
Well, as somebody who's lived in this community a long time and actually did take some classes at James Madison University when in high school, I certainly can understand. I mean, there does seem to be this sort of us versus them mentality, with the students, sometimes with city council, and it's terribly unfortunate. And I think one way we can help solve that is actually trying to reach out to the students. I mean, I'm the only candidate who's running who's actually reached out and spoken to the JMU College Democrats, the JMU College Republicans, Madison Liberty, and Students for a Sensible Drug Policy. I mean, and of course I understand there's partisan issues associated with all of that, but, these people, the students are part of our community, the people who are not students are part of our community. We all have to work together, and I really feel like, that having a dialogue is an important facet of making that work. I don't want the students to look at all these townies, they're trying to just, cramp things, or these students, they're just, making parties and making a mess for the residents of Harrisonburg. I mean, it's something that we have to come together and work toward as a community.
I think this kind of ties back into the racism issue. Quite honestly, prejudice is prejudice is prejudice. So I believe that a lot of times we are prejudging the students, right? And I think sometimes the students are prejudging the citizens. I've had the fortunate lifestyle of being on both sides of this coin. And I do believe that we need to move forward as seeing our students as neighbors and not a nuisance. I also believe that students need to become a part of our community, even beyond the community service aspect. Just as you are living with your lifestyle, I think we need to encourage that. I attend Divine Unity Community Church. I would say maybe 20 to 40% of our population are students at some of its heights. And we love on those students. And you're right, Joshua. I didn't go to all of the different parties. But what I did do is when I'm at Bojangles, I buy 2 or 3 meals. When I'm on campus, I'll give a hug. Because at the end of the day, we need to love and respect our neighbors, right? And that's how we build community. And I think we need to work on building community. I would love to see more mentoring programs from the students working with Harrisonburg City Schools. So that way parents can see the value of the students in the community so that children and parents can understand the beauty of the culture that JMU brings to the city. And let's start bridging that big gap. And quite honestly, as we work together, we'll build a stronger economy, a stronger culture, and a stronger social network. Thank you.
I think that's a really great question. And it ties in with a central focus of my campaign, which is place-based education. Place-based education has to do with getting students more involved in their local communities. While at university, we talk a lot about global issues, kind of get in the JMU bubble and lose your sense of place. I think that the city has a real opportunity to engage with professors and classes at JMU and EMU and get students involved in research projects for the city, downtown beautification type projects, conducting studies for the city, like the parking study that we talked about earlier. And a lot of students become more connected with our community doing these things for class credits or as internships during the summer. I think that would connect the JMU community better with our city.
It's been a little difference in the relationship with the university probably the last year and a half. The new president has come in and has challenged his university and his students to become engaged members of the community. Joshua, that was a very good question because I hadn't heard it in many years. So it was well put, and I think you're listening to the challenge that's out there. In addition, we need to be engaged citizens of the city and welcome them to our neighborhoods, our churches, our organizations. Also, there's an expectation of certain behaviors that they're away from home for the first time. And there's an expectation that, we live here too, being year-round residents, and we like to sleep after, or go to sleep at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. So with that, Joshua, we've opened the dialogue. Y'all have reached out. We've reached out. Let's continue to make it work.
I love having the advantage of answering last because really what I can do best is echo what everyone else up here has said. And that is to have mutual respect with the students and the citizens, to reach out, to build community, to build relationships, to broker the JMU students into our school division, to use the resources that JMU offers to us, and to invite you, Joshua, to come to city council meetings and speak out like other JMU students do all the time. So I'm really encouraged to have JMU here. I have great JMU neighbors, personally myself, and I just think that what we need to do as a Harrisonburg City citizenry is to be able to invite you all to our events, to our churches, to downtown, and to just make you a part of the community that you already are. We have to recognize that both the city and the university, we grow together. And so we're going to continue doing that for many years to come. And thank you for that question, and thank you all for your answers because I could use all of those.
Our next question comes from Tim Brady. Tim, if you're here and you'd like to read it.
There's kind of a famous Grover Norquist quote that he'd like to shrink government down to the size where you can drown it in the bathtub. And I don't know, I wanted to hear the candidate's opinion on the quote because I think it kind of shines a light on whether or not you think the government should take a leadership role in the community or kind of play a back burner role. I'm also curious if you're worried that if you win, that Grover will be coming for you.
And I believe we're starting with Joshua.
Okay, so the question about the growth and size of city government, is that pretty, and Grover Norquist coming to, haunt us in the night? Okay. Well, I'm a person who believes, in fiscal responsibility and limited government, at all levels, federal, state, and local. So, I'm not a person that would go out and expand government unnecessarily. And certainly someone who would try to keep taxes as low as possible so that we don't have, pet projects that you're like, oh, this seems like a good idea. Let's take the taxpayers' dollars and do this. So, I guess to answer your question, and this is probably not quite the way you would like the candidates to answer, is that I believe, yes, that we ought to work to keep our government as small and efficient as possible, so that way we can sort of give the best bang for our buck for all of the Harrisonburg taxpayers. But thank you.
Well, first, Grover can't come after me. I've got Jesus and a lot of big football players in my church. I don't suggest anyone do that. Okay. Secondly, small government, yes. Quite honestly, I think that I strongly believe in a community-led area, a community-led city. And I think Harrisonburg is set up to do that. We need the participation, okay? We need people to step up and participate. We need more forums like this. However, this place should be packed. When we attend Virginia Organizing, NAACP, NINA, Shen Bike Coalition, all these different meetings that are happening amongst the city, are they full? Are people there? If we can govern ourselves, if we can create things to bring to council, I think we would really move Harrisonburg forward in a direction that's not reactionary to the decisions that council makes. I would love to be your next city councilman. And quite frankly, I hope that yourself and everyone here brings more people to the polls. President Obama was a very popular man, led a great campaign, and had brought lots of people to the polls, for him and against him. But this is our city. This is your tax dollar. We should have more people at the polls for our city on the off elections as we do on the presidential elections. So I challenge each of you and myself to make sure that we have participation in government and community services from our neighbors as well. Thank you for coming tonight.
I think our local government here functions best when we work alongside private individuals and organizations that are passionate about our city. We have so many people here that love Harrisonburg and are willing to make time and financial sacrifices to make our city better. I think a great example of how our city has worked with individuals and organizations to improve our downtown area is Harrisonburg Downtown Renaissance, which has done an amazing job revitalizing our downtown. I'd like to see the city government, rather than expanding and really taking over how things are done, working alongside individuals and organizations like that, including some funding to make our city the way that we want to see it.
Going to the heart of the question, I would think the way I'm understanding it is we need to maintain fiscal responsibility. And by that, we need to control spending, preserve low real estate tax rates, as well as other tax rates. And we need to cost share with businesses, universities, neighboring governments, and other nonprofits for the provision of services that you expect. Have we done this? Yes. And I feel somewhat proud that we've made it through the last 8 years, and we have the second lowest tax rate in the state for independent cities, as well as we've improved our bond rating doing that. And the level of service that you receive regularly from the city has improved and has increased, except for twice a week trash pickup. We went to once a week, I'll admit that, from the cost savings standpoint. But I think for the level of taxes you pay, for the amount of services we receive, we have quite a bar.
I think limited government is a goal that we need to have in Harrisonburg, but I think more importantly, we need to have open, responsive government. And I feel like that it's very important for citizens to be able to come to city council meetings, to organize as groups, and to present cases to city council and other government agencies for changes and things that they would like to be able to see. I think, however, that city government and city council in particular has a responsibility to look at all of those issues and projects that come before it and to set priorities and to spend your tax dollars efficiently and effectively to get all services to all citizens in place in Harrisonburg. So yes, to your question, limited government, but more importantly, open and responsive government and setting fiscal priorities for the entire city of Harrisonburg.
Tim, thank you for your question, and the idea itself and the metaphor is absurd. I definitely do not condone killing children in the bathtub, but the idea that Grover Norquist stands behind is exactly the challenges, is exactly the disease that we are seeing at the federal level, the Bob Goodlatte inability to accomplish anything reasonable. You're cutting into my time. I think government can help people. And I do enjoy pet projects. I see economic development as a pet project. I see strong schools, a healthy community, high quality of life as things that we should be doing together with government. Do I think that we should have an overinflated budget? No. But I do think that we can actually work together for success rather than have the government fight itself from the inside. I think that's despicable.
Another question from the floor. We'll go to the back, and I can see some hands giving.
So many of you have mentioned dialogue and engagement. I'm curious, how important do you think it is for City Council to engage citizens in significant decision-making? And if you do find it important, how might you innovate citizen engagement?
Can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yeah, so how important do you think it is for City Council to engage citizens in significant decision-making? And if you do find it important, how might you innovate citizen engagement?
Yes, I agree. I think I've been clear about that civic engagement is extremely important. How would we innovate that? I think we would have to meet and talk about that, right? Quite honestly, that is the answer to the question. Cadegna led a wonderful Harrisonburg engagement summit a couple weeks ago. And it was a great event. A great event in that it created open space. And with that open space concept, there are no parameters. They're just topics, they're just interests and ideas and issues of the heart, issues of the community, issues of the city, and then we can start to build structure around those things. So quite honestly, to answer your question directly, I think it's a case-by-case scenario. I think having the efforts that were led to have MLK, right, Way named, I think are different than the efforts that Karen Thomas and Nina had to use to promote having the felon ban box pushed through city council, right? So it's going to take different efforts to do different things, but I think as a city, I think as a community, we can get things done. I think we just got to look at the issue. Quite honestly, to the earlier question, one of the issues was students as neighbors, and tons of ideas came out of that. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we've got to encourage participation. We've got to encourage our other brothers and sisters in Harrisonburg and in Rockingham County to be here and engage with us. That's how we do it.
I find out about a lot of city issues only from going to city council meetings and the Daily News Record. And I know that doesn't really reach a lot of JMU students and younger people in the area. And I think that is a big issue for our city. I do want to make anyone here aware about Be Heard Harrisonburg, where the city tracks public input on important issues. I think that public hearings should be more widely publicized in our city. I am so shocked that almost every public hearing in the city, it seems like there's no respondents except for big issues that have shown up in the paper beforehand. I think that if we want to reach out to more students in the area, especially, our city can work with the Breeze, the student newspaper at JMU, as well as the DNR, to make sure these issues get out there before they're voted on, so people can come and make their voices heard.
Dialogue and engagement is a key. I know myself and the other 4 members of council are open and available, either email, phones, cell phones, letters, for any issue that comes up before us. In addition, as a city, we've undertaken a citizen survey to baseline the citizens on opinions of certain projects that we just completed, and we'll come back in 2 years again to get additional survey instruments out so we can get an idea of perceptions of projects or future decisions that we need to make. But as an elected member of council, our phone numbers are published in the book, our websites are on the city webpage. We're open, we're available. Stop us on the street, ask us to attend meetings. I just attended one at the Alden Park View on an invitation for dinner. We had a wonderful discussion for about an hour and a half. I thought they got tired of listening to me talk. But anyway, there were a lot of questions, a lot of ideas, and that's what we're here for. We're here to engage and have conversation.
Thank you for the question. I too think that engagement and dialogue is so very important, and we have many, many forums in which to do that here in Harrisonburg. I remember the park plan downtown that HDR had the Sharettes downtown, and many people participated in that. It was publicized and people came out to talk. I also think that all of the departments and commissions that the Harrisonburg city government has They invite volunteers to serve on those commissions, and that's a great place to begin. I first began working by serving on the Blue Ridge Community College Board Commission, and then again on the Parks and Recreation Commission. So again, inviting people to serve in a volunteer capacity on these commissions and committees that we have in Harrisonburg is another great way to reach out and to invite participation and dialogue. Of course, attending city council meetings, watching them on TV if that's it. They stream, they're available on the website, so you can watch them there after the fact even. But I would encourage you to come to those meetings because, like Helen said, you learn a lot from attending those meetings. And I do think that all of the government, whether it's the city council members or the department heads, they're all accessible. And they're always willing to answer the phone. In fact, when you call, you get a real person and not a machine when you call down to city council. So again, I think participation and dialogue goes both ways, and you need to reach out too, and you'll find that someone's going to answer the phone and invite you to participate.
I really like this question in conjunction with the gentleman's question over here about JMU and thinking about the engaged community. You know, how do we make these connections? Thinking about the event today. We are here as multiple organizations, as multiple partners in our community and moving forward. Harrisonburg struggles with this. We have a lot of one-way communications. I think someone mentioned the DNR up here earlier today, and I think that that's is an example of some limited communications. You can't access that newspaper unless you pay for it. So folks who are accustomed to other news sources or who seek a diversity of news just don't see the full articles. I want to talk about dialogue and connection and engagement. And I want to look at an example in our community, which was when, as a community, the city and Rockingham County brought forth the local listening sessions for the prison. And this was essentially a forum where citizens universally stood up and expressed their displeasure. And there was limited dialogue. I was able to attend the Bridgewater session, and I think it's very valuable to incentivize people. We need to have reasons for people to be engaged so that they realize and feel that they really are truly being heard. So we need to listen, we need to engage committees and groups. I would just put a plug in that the city is moving forward. We can engage. I think that those who are interested in the conference center, we're going to have a dialogue about that. I think we should really listen.
Well, as I've said already, I do believe citizen engagement is important. And as been said, I do want to congratulate Mr. Degner for putting this program on recently. I think it was a fantastic thing. And, it wasn't but so many years ago, I would have thought, well, he's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, why would I go to that sort of thing? But, of course, I'm no longer a part of the Republican Party. And I'm glad that the fellows that actually did go. But to the rest of the candidates who didn't attend, I would say you really missed out. I mean, it was a great event where you got to meet a lot of people, talk about a lot of important issues, and, you just sort of moving beyond the parties and saying, that this is something that affects all of us. Another personal example, there was a fellow who came to speak to the city council for the first time. Is Mr. Beavers here in the audience today? I didn't see him. He was a JMU student who wanted to talk about an issue. And afterwards, I thought, that's great that he's actually taking an active part in our city government. So actually, when you go to speak to city council, they say, tell us your name and your address. And I went to go speak with him for about an hour, about some of his concerns facing city government. And, I think that dialogue and citizen engagement, it goes both ways. And so I'd like to see more of that. Thank you.
All right, we have another written question, and I probably am not reading this name correctly. Po Arudif, are you here? Did I pronounce that? I'll read the question. He asks, what is your opinion about building a jail instead of responding to the current failed system with a new approach? And we are starting with Helen on that one. Does anybody need me to repeat that?
I think that the biggest concern, rightly so, that Harrisonburg residents have about the question of expanding the jail is the idea that this has kind of been rushed forward. We still don't really have comprehensive statistics about the demographics in the jail now, how many people are currently in there for nonviolent type crimes. The current jail that the city has is a maximum security facility, but most of the people in there don't need to be in a maximum security facility, which is the most expensive kind to maintain. And our state is increasingly looking at alternative sentencing, which I think is a really great thing. So rather than rushing into a project like this, I think that the city needs to take a step back and be hopeful that we do engage in more alternative sentencing, so that is done more at the state level, and not spend a bunch of money on something that is probably not a good long-term investment.
Question was building a jail with current failed approach.
Your opinion on building a jail or addressing the current failed approach, the current failure with the new approach?
Current failure.
This is the question.
Okay. Currently, we are leasing in excess of 100 bed spots at Middle River Regional Jail Facility. Okay. Currently, we're leasing over 100, I think 120, Kai help me. And that 120 spot beds at Middle River Jail Facility. Currently, the downtown facility has 318, so we're setting roughly at 338, 438, 450 bed spots. Part of the process to look at alternative sentencing programs and structures is a requirement from the state for us to conduct, what's the wording I'm looking for, is feasibility study, community correction plan, is that correct? And that is the process we're in. We have not made any decisions on constructing a new jail. We are in the data gathering system of this process in conjunction with Rockingham County. And as a council, we've asked for additional information just last Tuesday night because we don't understand the data that we're looking at. So part of this is we're trying to gather the information from questions y'all have asked us at the listening session. So we're seeing, y'all are seeing exactly the same data that we are.
I do think the process of whether or not to build a new jail or to expand a jail should be something that's transparent and open to everyone out there. And I think that the current city council and the commission that's charged with gathering the data is doing a great job of providing those facts. Now it behooves us to interpret that data to see where it's going to fall, whether we need to build, whether we need to expand, or whether we need to encourage alternative sentencing structures. I often think about, Kai mentioned at the last council meeting that our jail is overcrowded, that it went from 280 to 480 in just 18 months. So one of the things I think about, instead of building a new jail, why don't we look further upstream to see why we're getting so many people in jail in the last 18 months. So instead of building a jail and pulling all of these people out of the river, if you will, we should look further upstream to figure out why they're falling in the river in the first place. And we've got lots of resources that come to the city council meetings and say, we want to offer alternative means to help people, to keep them out, to help them once they're in jail. Well, you know what? Those resources are needed further upstream to figure out why they're offending to be incarcerated in the first place. So let's put those resources to work further upstream if we could.
I want to celebrate those answers because I think that focusing on this data really is important. We have this jail issue, which everybody understands is a bad investment. This is a bad investment of money in the short term, a terrible investment of money in the short term, a very bad investment of money in the long term. Every day we expect every prisoner to cause us to lose significant resources. This is not a winner. This is not a community builder. This is something that should be the last recourse for a community. I think that the data is very important. The why. We need to know the age, we need to know the sex, we need to know the race, we need to know the residence, the offense, the means and the bond status, and the jail time of every citizen that is in this jail facility currently. These are the questions that I have asked to the committee that's reviewing this, And these are questions that oftentimes still remain unanswered. Nationally, we have an issue with national trends where people who are who don't have the means to escape jail are stuck there, and then are stuck in a cycle, an ever-increasing, challenging cycle, and that is a major challenge to our community. I think we need to focus on that data issue, and we need to know why. We really need to know why, and we need to share that why with the whole community. Secondly, I think we need to look at other ways to better invest, and at this point the number on the table is $40 million in our community. What are ways that we can help citizens who are focused in this, who are stuck in this cycle? And I've got 2 petitions on those subjects that I'd like your signatures on.
Okay, well, for starters, I do think we need more information on the issue of the jail. Because I'm one of those people that I think we should exercise caution. Hopefully a lot of you read the website Old South High. If not, I certainly encourage you to do so. It's a fantastic resource. Is that a clap for that? Okay, great. So yeah, I mean, it's important. It feels like in some ways our society is just too willing to say, well, we'll just put you in jail for this offense and that offense. And we ought to look and say, well, maybe there's a better way than just locking up someone and throwing away the key. I mean, obviously for some offenses that ought to be, that is the proper remedy. Now, getting back to dialogue, had the opportunity to sit down with a member of the Augusta County Board of Supervisors about this issue. And now, of course, we do lease space from them. And obviously, Augusta County does have an economic interest in having us continue to do so. But really, I mean, jail is a considerable expense. How many people want that in their backyard, put up next to you if you had that opportunity? So it's not something that we should really rush into. We need to sit down, think about it carefully, understand all the costs and benefits of doing this sort of thing.
My opinion on building a jail is that it's ridiculous. I believe that we should not look at building a new jail. I think that we need to look at why it is that this jail has already maxed out. I think we need to look at why people that look like me are constantly going to prison. I think we need to look at why people that are less fortunate and less privileged are constantly going to prison. I think that if you have a city that has families that are 70% are on free and reduced lunch, we have low unemployment, people are employed, they're underemployed, they're not making enough money. So guess what? You're building a case for more people to go to prison because you're having less fortunate people. You're having a lower economic class of people. And those people have a propensity to be imprisoned. I think we need to deal with that issue, and let's deal with the heart of the matter. I think furthermore, the idea of expanding a jail, building a new jail, projects a negativity, a negative mindset that we're going to fill the jail. Quite honestly, we wouldn't have built the school. We wouldn't have built a park. We wouldn't have built anything if we don't plan on filling it. And quite honestly, it's heartbreaking to me to know that we would build another maximum security facility, another larger facility, so that guess what? When I'm 55, in 20 more years, we'll be having the same conversation again. Well, I'd rather have this conversation in reverse and figure out how we can keep people out of jail and have less people going to prison. Thank you.
In order to balance out some of the questions, take one from this side.
I would like to recognize that the structure of government that we have here has a couple of parts. It has you all on City Council, and it also has a professional staff. With that in mind, in our diverse city with an all-white power structure, we worry about this from the Washington Post. In North St. Louis County, the most organized groups are the white homeowners, longtime residents, police, and municipal employees who benefit from the status quo. Something to think about in the Ferguson area. Now here in Harrisonburg, nearly 10 years ago, the Office of Community Development refused to back down when a resident tried to use stormwater bioretention methods on his property and has been relentless in suppressing initiatives since then, including enforcing a tall grass and weeds ordinance on occupied properties contrary to state enabling legislation. They have hobbled the business garden permit, but relaxed the same ordinances to accommodate a junkyard just recently. My question here, these are symptoms of running the city for the benefit of city staff and favored businesses. On my question to you, on what side have you stood if you have been in city government, or if you have not, give evidence of where you would stand if elected?
I'm all in favor of the tall grass and weed ordinance. Actually, there's respect to the property owner next door, and that your neighbor has a significant investment in their home, and if it's distracting from them, I think there's a certain standard, community standard that we share. And I think we've been quite reasonable in applying that. In regards to the question about junkyard and change, I think you received communication from the community development staff that is under a different ordinance structure. So I supported staff in their decision in that regard.
Great. Thank you for the question. I too believe that government, city government should be open and responsive, as I stated before, and that all city departments should respond to citizens' requests. In terms of ordinances, I think that ordinances are always looked at and passed with the best interest of all of the citizens at heart. So I do think that if there is any kind of issue that you as a citizen or your neighbor or anyone else has the right to question an ordinance, to come to city council, to question anybody, a department staff member or a city council member about that particular ordinance, and see about getting that changed if it's not something that you think is fair. I think that all of our policies, our rules, our laws are all fair to all citizens in Harrisonburg City. So I'm not sure that I see a problem at all with anything that's happening.
Cody, I appreciate the question, and the subject of citizen involvement in stormwater bioremediation is an important one for our community. We have actually a lot to do to be sure that folks don't have their lawns flooded when it rains, and to be sure that neighbors can live together and collaborate together in this sense of community that we're, again, trying to develop with events like this. The individual that you spoke of might have been before their time, because right now we are approaching some new needs to review our stormwater practices. We've got the MS4 stormwater management rules that are hitting up. So we're actually going to need to take a holistic approach as a community at looking at our stormwater program to do a whole plan to advance stormwater items. So I hope that's helpful in answering your question with regards to bioremediation and particular permitting. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question as well. I'm a big proponent of property rights, and I feel like, if you're not doing something that injures your neighbor, then that's your business. That also comes under individual rights. And yes, from time to time, it seems like the city does overstep their bounds. And of course, in that situation, folks ought to come to council or to the appropriate committee and say, hey, perhaps we've gone too far here. And the city ought to reevaluate that and say, well, is this reasonable? I mean, is this putting some sort of undue hardship, or is this an appropriate response for a community that we want to have? But yeah, in general, we do have to respect that as long as you're not hurting your neighbor, oftentimes that should be your business.
Hey, Pody, I believe at the end of your question, you said there's symptoms of running the city for staff. And I agree with you that I think sometimes the tail is wagging the dog. I firmly believe that when elected, and when Alan is elected, I believe that we can kind of right that ship. I think that we can bring back civic engagement, and I think that we can restore the order of the relationship between council and staff and that hierarchy in the proper manner. I think sometimes things kind of go from the bottom up, and things should be a vertical relationship from the citizens to council to staff. They are our employees and they are to engage. We do not live and work for them. Fortunately, they are paid through tax dollars to work for us to the benefit of you. And so yes, I do agree that ultimately we have symptoms of the city working for staff, and quite honestly, the relationship just has to be inverted. I agree, brother.
I think that the lawn ordinance that you speak of, and also many zoning ordinances in the city, are not very evenly enforced. It is true that right now, individuals who want to do things a little differently aren't allowed to, whereas bigger developers in the city sometimes get a free pass, and I don't think that's right. If elected to council, I'll take a little bit more relaxed approach to zoning and lawn ordinances, because I believe that people should have a right to use their property as they wish.
This is one more written question, and if the candidates would agree, we'll shorten your response time to 60 seconds each, and then we'll keep to our 9 o'clock end time. What makes you specifically qualified to deal with the detail work required of a member of Harrisonburg City Council? This is from Roberta Fernandez.
I love that question. I am a detail-oriented person, and I bring that to Harrisonburg City Council. I serve on numerous commissions and committees. I'm the treasurer of my church and the treasurer of the Pilot Club of Harrisonburg. I serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and most importantly, for the last 19 years, I was an employee of Harrisonburg City Schools. In the last 12 of those years, I was the finance director. And so I am proud to say that for those last 12 years, we presented a fair and balanced budget that was fully accepted by City Council, and we made sure that our revenues always exceeded our expenditures every year. And I know that I'm detail-oriented, and I'm going to be pleased to crunch those numbers for each and every one of you, because that's what I do every day in the business that I operate here in Harrisonburg as well.
I think I can echo some of that experience with board work. I've been on several boards and commissions, the Energy Council for the Commonwealth, the Transportation Energy Partners Board for the country, working to collaborate on cleaning up our air. I run a business, Virginia Clean Cities. As executive director, I have to deal with budgets and plans and materials and the entire rigmarole of the day-to-day of a six-person operation with a nonprofit. I got my policy chops working for Tim Kaine in the governor's office as Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Trade, and all of that had to be perfect work. I'm a researcher with a hunger for information, so I'm interested in diving into these details and working on a range of issues, not just what I know, but specifically the stuff I don't know is what I'd like to be going after.
All right. Well, to answer your question, in my capacity in various political arenas, I've served on numerous boards and commissions. I was actually surprised several months ago when I was asked to serve on the board of the budget of my church. But I think you'll find that when it comes to something that I'm passionate about, which, good government is something I'm very passionate about, you're going to be hard-pressed to find someone who won't work harder for you, the citizens of Harrisonburg. I've been involved in politics since I was a student here at Harrisonburg High School, and I will continue to be so, and hope to bring much of the dialogue that we had and the concerns that you have to City Council. And so I would certainly appreciate your support.
As a child, I grew up as a part of the Baptist General Convention of Virginia. It was an organization that had thousands of churches in it. And from that age forward, I have always been a part of church organizations and leadership. I'm on the executive board of my church now and help to make detailed decisions, everything from paper towels to seats to how our tithes and offerings are disseminated throughout the church and throughout the community. In addition to that detail, I sell advertising. I sell marketing, and I work with very many community organizations, and quite honestly, what that work involves extreme detail. Quite honestly, it's to the second, it's to the minute every single day, and I deal with millions of dollars. I've had the fortunate position of having to do that for most of my life, and so having dealt with more money, quite honestly, than we'll even deal with in the city budget, for my living and for my family, I feel comfortable being responsible for that for the city. And growing up in a small family business, I understand the attention to detail having an effect on everyone's lives, and I would take that detail very seriously and when elected. Thank you.
I think that my attention to detail on city matters can be shown most clearly through the city council meetings that I've been attending for the last few years. I think I can say I've been at least twice as many more city council meetings as any other candidate here, except for the mayor. And a lot of those meetings, we were talking about zoning, we were talking about appropriations, but it was really, I think that's really what it comes down to for our city. I also have an interest in the city budget. I've gone through hundreds of pages, line by line, for our city budget, and I think that I would bring that same level of attention to detail to future budgets and appropriations in the city.
Attention to detail. For those of you who don't know me, I'm probably a little too detail oriented. Those that do know me will attest to that. I sort of, when I first got on council, floated the idea of a finance committee. We didn't have one before. So we have a 2-member committee that actually looks at this detail. In addition to that, we've had unqualified city audits for the last 8 years while I'm on, for those of you in public auditing. And it's been a heck of an endeavor. But with that, I like the numbers. I get out in the weeds sometimes too much, but I also have the ability to come back and look at it from 40,000 feet. So I guess my work has shown that I like the detail.
And that is about the time that we've got. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking Ted Bird, Dee Dee Doss, Alan Harnett, Joshua Hoffman, Chris Joy, and Helen Trevor. If you have additional questions that you wrote down, leave them on the way out the door, because we're going to continue to shuffle through those to prepare the forum that will happen again, the second forum with the same 6 candidates, on Wednesday, October 15th, same place, same time, 7 to 9. So we will be churning through those questions as a planning committee, the 5 organizations. So please leave your questions, and thank you again for taking the time to join us tonight.
Please, as some of the candidates mentioned, please invite your friends or family members to come. The sponsors are really interested in increasing the participation of participants, so please invite others to come.